The smell of burning paper filled my parents' living room, thick and sharp, curling through the air as orange flames licked upward from the fireplace. My daughter Sarah's face drained of color as she stared in horror at the fire consuming the contract she had been proudly showing the family just moments earlier. The room went silent except for the crackling of the flames. My 12-year-old niece Emma stood nearby with a smirk on her face, clearly pleased with herself, and casually said, "Oops." She then added, without hesitation, that her daddy said I did not deserve success anyway, that people like me should stay in their place. I kept my expression neutral, despite the shock running through me, and calmly asked Emma what she had just burned. She shrugged and replied that it was that stupid paper I had been bragging about, my little business deal or whatever it was supposed to be. My brother Marcus walked in from the kitchen laughing instead of correcting her behavior and brushed it off by saying it was just paperwork and that I could print another copy because Emma was just being a kid. Sarah's voice trembled as she quietly explained that it was the original signed contract for the Henderson account worth $1.2 million. My mother barely looked up from her knitting and said I should not have been waving it around, agreeing with Marcus that another copy could be printed. I explained that it had original signatures and was notarized, but Marcus waved his hand dismissively and told me to just get them to sign again, asking what the big deal was and mocking my consulting business as if it were not a real company. My father nodded along and added that I had gotten high and mighty about a side hustle and that making copies was not difficult. I looked at Sarah, whose eyes were now filled with tears because she had worked 3 months on the Henderson proposal, and this had been her first major client since joining my firm. I calmly asked Emma if she understood what she had destroyed. She shrugged again and repeated that her daddy said I acted better than everyone and needed to be brought back to reality. Marcus wrapped his arm around her and told me not to interrogate his kid, blaming me for bringing work documents to a family dinner. My sister-in-law Jennifer entered and dismissed the situation entirely, saying kids will be kids, while Marcus laughed and mocked the contract as fake, claiming if I really had million-dollar deals, I would not be driving a 10-year-old Honda. I replied that the Honda ran fine, but Jennifer added that I could not afford anything better and accused me of exaggerating my accomplishments. I corrected them about my past consulting work, explaining that the startup I advised went public, but they dismissed it and accused me of inventing stories. My father said I had always been a dreamer and that pretending my business was more than it was made me look foolish. I stood up, said I needed to make phone calls, and told Sarah we were leaving. Marcus mocked me for running away. Emma giggled, and they laughed about my fake contract. In the car, Sarah broke down crying and said months of work were gone and that the client would not go through the process again. I told her to give me a moment and made several calls. I called my banker, David Morrison, and instructed him to freeze all credit lines for Marcus and Jennifer Thompson and asked for a review of their mortgage terms. I then called Richard Hayes, chairman at Continental Savings and Loan, and requested a full review of the Thompson mortgage with paperwork to call the loan. When Sarah asked what I had done, I told her I made sure her hard work would not be ignored. The next morning, Marcus called in a panic because Jennifer's cards were frozen. I refused to fix anything and calmly stated that banks make business decisions. My parents called accusing me of overreacting and punishing a child, but I explained that destroying a legally binding contract was serious financial damage. Marcus later called again in distress after receiving notice that their mortgage was being called and demanded to know what it meant. I explained the acceleration clause and that the full balance would be due in 30 days. He begged for help and apologized, but I told him the opportunity he destroyed was already gone. My mother accused me of revenge, but I explained this was consequences. Later, Sarah asked if I was really going to take their house, and I said accountability mattered. The next morning, the entire family confronted me, and Marcus realized that my company owned his mortgage. I explained I had owned it for 18 months, and that business investments were not personal until he made them personal. Marcus finally admitted his jealousy and took responsibility for teaching his daughter harmful values. Emma apologized sincerely and admitted she had been wrong. Marcus begged for mercy and promised accountability. I laid out the terms, which included formal apologies, repayment for Sarah's lost commission, financial education for Emma, and Marcus personally advocating for Sarah to the Henderson Group. He agreed. Weeks later, he secured Sarah another opportunity worth $600,000. Emma wrote Sarah a handwritten apology letter which Sarah framed. My parents became more respectful of my work. The mortgage terms were modified and payments continued. Emma now asks Sarah about her contracts with genuine interest. Sometimes people need real consequences to finally understand what truly matters.